my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, May the 23rd, and it is a gray, overcast, rainy, not fun to be outside day, which is as called for and as predicted by the weather people, so good for them. They did an accurate job forecasting. It is the Victoria Day long weekend here in Canada, so it's a long weekend for us. So true to form, as I said, certainly in the part of the country in Canada where I live, I always go the May long weekend, the weather is always terrible. My parents have a cabin up in the mountains, and they are up there for this weekend and have snow. Yep. They have snow up there. Now it is the mountains, the elevation is higher, and again, bad weather, higher elevations, you can have snow in the mountains generally at any point in time over the course of the year, just due to elevation. So yeah, my dad and my brother are planning on going climbing. They are mountain climbers, not just hikers, but mountain climbers, which includes all of the gear that goes along with that, the whole ropes, carabiners, things. So the weather was not good enough for my father to be willing to go mountain climbing, but apparently my brother was still going mountain climbing, so I hope they're having a good weekend. And true to form, that's why I stayed in the city. I am technically out here in the sunroom, although it is not necessarily warm here, hence the warm fuzzy sweater. And I will certainly say that once I am done recording this, I will not be spending a lot more time out here because it's not the fun numbers. Again, if it was this temperature but the sun, this room would be glorious. It is not. But we're here filming anyway because I think there's better lighting out here. And with that, welcome to my Flosstube channel. This is a channel about, I know, not weather, but cross-stitching. Hard to tell so far. If you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me as well. And certainly thank you for coming back and spending more time with me. If you are a regular viewer, you will notice that last week's video went up horrifically late. And yeah, it was movie length, so we're going to try to keep this one at sub-movie length. So the answer is huge technical difficulties getting that thing uploaded. It had nothing to do with the size. It had all sorts to do with 12 other things. Many phone calls with tech support. Anyway, it finally got loaded. My answer is, if I'm having problems getting this one uploaded, the answer is I'm not phoning tech support tonight. I'm going to phone tomorrow. Anyway, so it may go up on Sunday. It may go up on Sunday. We'll see how it goes. But there is one coming, which by the time you see this, you will know because you will see it up. Anyway, the life of a floss tuber and the things when I love when companies do updates to software things to make things better. Let's just say, as far as I'm concerned, the software updates to make my life better only made everything worse. That's all I have to say about that. Anywho, all right, and with that, okay, we're done with all of that. Weather, technical problems, etc., etc. Let's get on with some stitching. That's not true. Let's deal with some questions from last week. So thank you for the comments last week. And I will say the topic for this week is courtesy of Denise. So as I say on I think I say on all of my videos, if you've got any questions or concerns or topics that you would like me to specifically address, please leave them in the comments down below. And certainly last week's movie about stitching tools was due to a viewer's request. This week's video, topic for this week's video, is also from a viewer request. And I've got another one which is coming in a couple of weeks, which we'll talk about that in just a second, which is also due to a viewer request. So again, if you've got any questions, concerns, topics you'd like me to address, please put them in the comments down below, because I'm pretty sure if you've got a question that looks like more than one person is interested, we're going to do it as a topic. So about the topics last week. So one, I'm just going to start with, I think I had mentioned that I have a friend who was insistent that she was going to give me her list of tools. I said, no, I'm going to do the tools I use. So I did have a chat with her. She only had a couple of extra tools, which, but I quite frankly said, I don't have those and I've never used them. It just had to do with things to use to pull needles with. So a hemostat, which is a medical tool, but apparently you can, she uses them for pulling needles. But I don't have one. I can't even tell you where the best place is to get one or what they look like. And she has another thingy where it sounds like it's a tool that clamps onto your needle to help pull it through. Anyway, I don't have either one of those, but if you're concerned about and wanting to know those, again, leave it as a comment down below and I can get more details from her. She also did laugh at my pathetic level of scissors, my 3 pairs of scissors that I showed. I have more pairs than that. She, however, is a collector of scissors, which is, there's a difference between a scissor collector and a scissor user. So there's no way that I'm ever going to have the same number of scissors as she does. But there are several of you who commented that you have a pair of scissors with every project, which, if that's the best thing for you, that's great. Now, again, in the current times, it's not like I'm taking my stitching anywhere. I have my 2 stitching spots. I'm not going to things. I'm not going and hanging out with friends and stitching. I'm not going to retreats. I'm not going to classes. I'm not doing any of those. So my need for having multiple pairs is lower than it has been in quite some time. But yes, I don't necessarily put them in every bag, but that is usually because I'm stitching in one of 2 spots where there are scissors located. Someone wanted to know the magnification of the lamp that I showed, and I believe that the magnification on that particular lamp is a 2 times magnification, but don't quote me. I think there's a couple of versions of that lamp which may have different magnification levels. So I think if you go to the link that I provided, and sort of my whole default position is copy the name of the item, and then paste it into Google and see what comes up. That's my solution to a lot of things. Take the item name and paste it into Google and see. The Google helps on a wide variety of topics. There are lots of different magnification levels, and again, I think if you go to the Google and you just Google magnification lamp, and then if you put in the level of magnification you're looking, it will pop up with things, and then you can assess the products that show up for that. Amazon, Google. Again, I think if you go into one of those stitching tool Facebook groups, they tend to show people with their favorite lamps. And the question has been asked multiple times, so you could just go into the Facebook group and just search for lamp or light, and see what people say. This is what I use. I think it's the best thing on the face of the planet, and go from there. Again, what you need out of a lamp depends on your situation. So even when I talked about mine, right, it depends on if you're using a big lazy boy recliner and you tend to stitch with your feet up. What you need out of a lamp is going to be different from someone who's sitting in, for example, like a chair like mine, where I don't have my feet out in front of me and I'm not using a stool. Or if you're working on a desk or a table, or all of those things are different. So only you know what your stitching situation is like and what you need out of a lamp. And so what the best light is for you to decide for you. And it only needs to be the best thing for you. Barbara, thank you for the point towards the Etsy shop for the Needle Park Avenue. I did see that one even before I talked about it on the video. Here's the trick though, or the complication. So I live in Canada, and so I have a slight problem shopping for things when the cost of shipping is more than the item I'm buying. So I did see it on the Etsy shop, but the cost to ship to me is more. It doubles the price. And then at that point, so for me, I think it turns into like it's probably a $32 item, Canadian. And so at that point I go, getting a second one is not worth $32 to me. I am 100% sure that I did not pay $32 for it in the first place. So I'm struggling. That's where I'm struggling with the needs and the wants. I mean, I have my second one that I use out here that's a completely different one. So, but if I were traveling to the US, or if I had a friend that I knew was traveling from the US back to Canada. So I have relatives who are snowbirds who have a place down in Phoenix. So if they were going back, so whenever that opens up, that's an option for me, is that I could ship it to them, because then they can schlep it home for me. Anyway, that's the difference. Shipping costs within the US are dramatically different and dramatically lower than for those of us who are living outside of the US. And you might think for something small like that, it wouldn't be horrific. And the answer is, yeah, the shipping costs get large in a hurry. So if you're ever on any Facebook groups or you see posts where it's like, like I'm anywhere outside of the US and somebody's going like, the shipping, it's because it really is more expensive. And in fact, while I was having my morning shopping, there was I was looking at a site where there were a few charts on there that I was contemplating getting, and I completely changed my mind because the cost to get 5 charts was going to be $37 US. And I went, I don't care about the charts that much. So so when you're outside of the US, shipping turns into actually a big factor in making those decisions. But thank you for pointing me somewhere. I'm just waiting for that moment where I can get it where the shipping costs are not more than the cost of the item itself. But thank you. Barbara also had a topic, which that's the one that we're going to do in a couple of weeks from now, is what do I pack in when I'm traveling for stitching reasons, whether it's stitching with a group, whether I'm going to a retreat. And that's a really good question, because that's a different set of requirements than when I'm stitching at home. So we are going to do that as a separate topic, and my expectation is that's probably, I was going to say 2 weeks away. I think it's actually 3 weeks. 3 weeks from now, I think, is when we're going to do that as a topic. So Barbara, we are going to address that topic. I think 3 weeks from now, if you're going to StitchCon, it may not necessarily be in time for you. Sorry about that. But it will be there for your next one, or for all posterity if you ever need to come back and see what I personally choose to pack when I'm going traveling with my stitching. Judy was asking, she had a question about what is Prim style stitching. So Prim style is, for the way that I describe it, is incredibly rustic looking. So in my head, that's where you get the figures that are a little more like stick figures. You know, you can find reproduction samplers that are from the 1800s and the 1700s where like the alphabets are very elegant and refined, and bouquets look lovely, and there's all sorts of things. So to me, that is not necessarily Prim. For me, Prim is very rustic looking, where it's, yeah, again, it's sort of very, very thin in terms of coverage, not very decorative. Again, like if you've got people in there, not that they're necessarily stick figures, but they're much more, they're not, yeah, I was gonna say, like they're just not as well shaped as other ones, or like they're very rustic looking. You know, so I think about like cave drawings from, you know, thousands of years ago. Like it's stitching sort of, to me, that's what Prim stitching is. It's very rustic looking, very muted color palettes. So that's what Prim style stitching is to me. Jeanette Douglas did a whole series of, they were all about women's names. I don't have any of them, but I can put a link to that section of her website, I think, because it was a series where, like, to me, those are Prim style stitching. Prim style doesn't necessarily appeal to me because it is so rustic. So it's not necessarily a style that I personally do. But again, if I can find that link to Jeanette's, I'll put that in the notes below. Let me just make a note that I'm going to do that in my notes. Okay. Melody, thank you for your comment about, so she enjoyed my thing that I'm trying out these multiple versions of rotations, and she's like, good luck to you, because I haven't found a rotation that works for me. And her family mocks her and says, you know, she rotates the rotations, and I'm all for rotating the rotations. I'm afraid that I'm going to try about 27 different rotations, and it's still the perfect one that's going to work for me is it's sometimes referred to as the swiwi. Stitch what you want when you want. So SWYWYW. So there's a small grouping. Again, this is it was labeled Swiwi by Jessie Marie from Jessie Marie Does Stuff. Swiwi, stitch what you want when you want. Tina, thank you. Yes, I like my art jar as well. It's pretty. And I think she has a valid point that probably the reason, it could very well be that the fact that I'm using the batting in my handy clamp is the reason why my tension is as good as it is. It could be totally the defining factor as to why why the tension is as good as it is. I don't know. I'm following the suggestions from the lovely Facebook group, and I had that moment where it's like, this is working wonderfully for me. So when you find something that works for you, I don't question why. I don't figure out why it's working and it didn't work for something else. But now that you've made that comment, I am thinking about on some scroll roddy thingies that I might try some batting on there. So thank you for highlighting that, because I might try the batting on something else too. All right. Okay, so those are the questions from last week. Okay, now we're going to get into the stitching. But thank you for the comments. Really enjoyed those. All right. We're going to start with the Never-Ending Nativity. Yeah, the Bethlehem Star, here we go. I got a pathetic amount of stitching done on this week. Even though I said last week I took my week off, and so this last week I was going to do better. The answer is I didn't do very well at all, but I made an effort and I did some stuff you're barely going to be able to tell. So it's never as much as I should. So my answer is I think part of the problem is because it's May and I want to do Mania, and I have things that I want to do in Mania, and so fitting the Never-Ending Nativity into May is causing me a little bit of an issue. But we have 8 more days in May. I have set myself a specific goal for the Never-Ending Nativity, but let's at least have a look at what I did manage to accomplish, sadly, in this pathetic attempt of stitching over this last week. So I know so I didn't work on this angel at all. I worked on this one. And so the sad part, which I don't know that you're going to be able to tell at all, I have now successfully finished all of the DMC up here in the top part of this pink angel that needed to be done has now been accomplished. All of it. Was it a huge amount? No. But all of these gaps generally left that you can see in these wings, that means it's Krynic. So even the evening that I was working on this, I was working on it later in the evening, and about 10:30 when I'd finished my sad little amount of DMC stitching in 3 different colors, I looked at it and very graciously went, ugh, Krynic. You would think by now it's still my reaction to Krynic. It's the most ridiculous thing. And I'm quite sure that when I sit down to do it, I'm going to go, it wasn't that bad at all. It's just, apparently in my head, I have a thing about Krynic, and it goes like, ugh. Anyway, so my goal for this week is to finish all of the Krynic in this pink angel and her wing. So that generally and hopefully if I'm a really good girl, I will use some of those colors, because again, the spots down here are also Krynic. So to the extent that they dribble down here, hopefully I can get the Kreinik cross stitching done in this Pink Angel this week. There will still be back stitching left to go on this Pink Angel, but my goal for this week is to finish the Kreinik cross stitches. I know it's a fine line. It's like probably if I sat down tonight and just did it, like it would be anyway. Apparently I have a mental block. The never-ending Nativity continues. Remember when I thought it was going to be done last year? Anywho, it's delay tactics and I know it. It is what it is. I just need to have it ready so we can get it into the frame before Christmas. So there may become a period where it's like, this is the month of the never-ending Nativity because I'm just not getting it done. Hopefully June will be a better month because then May will be gone and those projects will go away again. All right, so my May focus piece. So this was a big week for this one because with my rotation that I'm trying out for the month of May, which is 3 weeks on my 3 days on my focus piece, spin the decision wheel, work on another project for 2 days, back to my project for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 days, which also reminds me, thank you for all of you who didn't put in the comments about, my friend mocked me, said like goose egg. I'm like, I know, when I watched it back, it was like gooseneck, but all of you knew that. And when I stumbled all over the poor words to Oh, What a Beautiful Morning, I have a problem with the official title with that because when I sing it, I truly do sing it as Oh, What a Glorious Morning, which I know is not correct. Rodgers and Hammerstein from Oklahoma, that is not how that song goes in real life. That's just how I personally sing it. So yes, even in my songs, I'm changing things. Anyway, 3 days on, 2 days on spin the wheel, 3 days back on with my focus piece is what I've been doing. So this last week, of the 7 days, 6 of them were devoted to April's Blue Diamond, which I think is great. So this is not gonna go very far because it's probably gonna come back out. Okay, so here she is. Yeah, see, that's where it's exact. Okay, so I took off the bottom, the sidebars, sort of, so I could unroll her, so I could show her in all of her gloriousness, because when I'm actually working on this, I lose the top part of this. So I have now finished. This is where her waist is. She's a very tall woman, let me tell you. Very tall fairy. Anyway, so I have stitched all of the white dress down to here. So we are now into, so I've stitched all the way down to there, and I'm now into this bottom part of her dress. Now, I only have 8 days left in May, so I'm secretly hoping, so this is where I may throw, congratulations, I may throw the rotation out the window and see if I just can't get some specific goals accomplished. So it'd be really lovely if I could end the month with all of the bottom part of this dress. So not working on the flowers here, but get all of the white and the blues in this bottom part. Now, and again, this little bit down here, that's actually part of this trailing ribbon thing that she's got going on. So there's, yeah, so the bottom part of that dress excluding the flowers. I think it would be fantastic if I finished the month with the bottom part of the dress excluding the flowers done. I think that I would feel like this has been a very successful mania for me. 1, because I finally started her. 2, I think she's looking lovely. So I also did sort of, it's going to be hard to tell, but again, there's a couple of colors of DMC that are around this lovely white part. And again, all of those gaps are spaces for beads. But yeah, I think she's coming along lovely. I love her on this fabric. I'm thrilled that I got her started for May. So all in all, already this May has been a success for me. Yeah, it's been good. I'm enjoying it. All right. Okay, so then when I spun the wheel, and so I've already showed you 2 projects, and I've been very clear that if they got spun again, I would be not unhappy in the slightest. And I can say Faerie Winter Dream got called again. Actually, that reminds me, I'm going to have to haul the other one back out because I need to take, yeah, I'll figure out some kind of screenshot for this thing. Anyway, so Faerie Winter Dream got called again, which was good. I was very happy when that got called. Again, if it got called all the time, and again, who knows what, again, I may throw the rotation out these last 8 days and just stitch what I want when I want. I may swee-wee my way to the end of the month. So here's what I did. I had talked about that I'd done the half stitches and I was going to cross them, and that's not what I did. So I started that way down here, and then I just wanted her arm to get accomplished. And so it's not entirely accomplished. So again, I may force myself out regardless. Again, I think the answer is I'm going to throw the rotation out the window. Because I would just love for her arm to be done. Now, it would be lovely if her neck could get done too, but I think I am significantly slower stitching when I'm doing 1/1. It's a personal choice. I've chosen to do the skin 1/1. It slows me down dramatically. And if you look at my stitches up close, because I look at them up close, I would say I don't think my stitches look fantastic. I don't think this is a shining example of, if you looked at my 1/1, you'd go like, ooh, didn't she do a great job? I think the answer is like, what was going on there? But the answer is, when you hold it back, which is generally how most people will be looking at it, it looks nice. And to me, the difference is, not that these are bad, but I like when the skin looks a little finer relative to the rest of the stitching. And that's just personal preference. Again, because I don't do a lot of 1/1, would I say my stitches are awesome? No, which is why I'm starting with the appendages, because hopefully by the time I get to the neck and the face, I will have remembered what I'm doing, which is highly unlikely, because I think for the rest of the May, all I'm going to successfully get accomplished is the rest of this arm. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I think I'm throwing the rotation out the window. I think I'm going to see if I can't get that accomplished and then finish this off, and then I think I'll go successful May. Apparently my rotation is sweetie. Anyway. All right. So those are the 3 things that I stitched on this week. What I would say, this was a banner week for stitching. I don't know that it was a banner week for stitching. Again, I should always get more accomplished on the Never-Ending Nativity, but I think April's Blue Diamond is coming along fabulously well. I'm very happy with my progress on that particular project. All right, and with that, let's get into Stashquisitions. So we didn't do Stashquisitions last week because, of course, I felt it was going to be movie length, which is what it was. And I have been, once I fell off the bandwagon from Stitch from Stash, and then I had several deaths to deal with, my morning shopping was well in hand. So there's a few orders coming out of the US. I don't know when they're going to arrive, and my answer is they're not in my 2021 stitching plans, so, they can come whenever. I will say, that Mother's Day, there were a lot of sales for that, either that weekend or there were a lot of flash sales for that one day. I think we didn't talk about it last week because they were one-day sales, and they were, if you missed them, you missed them. So I will say, so Tempting Tangles had a Mother's Day sale, so with all of my big talk about I was going to restrain myself on a couple of those sales and, wait till more of them were shown. No. So I think we're up to part 4 on Quakers in I don't know where it is. I don't even remember the I want to say it's Italy. I think. Anyway, so yeah, I went ahead and bought those. Jan Hicks on her Etsy shop had a Mother's Day sale. So, and again, I'm talking about this because I have not printed off the patterns. So I got her Seasons in Lace Winter because I just think that thing is lovely. She's working on spring. I haven't even gone to see if she's done a video this week, last week, anyway, whatever. Spring is the next one. I know it's coming out this month, so if it's not out already, it's coming imminently, which I think is done in greens. I don't remember. She's also, you know, so she's planning on doing 4. She had a sale, and I love the winter one. So even if all I ever do is winter, I think that pattern, and it's the Seasons in Lace winter, not necessarily. She did 2 versions of it. It's the one with the snowflake is the one that I like better. One of them has like flowers at the top, and then she redesigned it when she was gonna ended up saying I'm gonna do 4 of these, and she changed them to snowflakes. So I bought the winter one with the snowflakes. So got that on her sale along with Florographica. That one I think is really interesting. I think I would change several of the colors in there. It's done on a dark gray. I like that part. Anyway, stay tuned for some point when that comes up. Stitching with the Housewives also had a sale, so I bought several of her tiered tray tidbits. So those are only available as PDFs at the moment, as far as I know. And I only got the flower seeds one, so zinnia seeds and daisy seeds. She's got another whole series where it's like carrot seeds and I want to say cabbage seeds. Anyway, she's got some vegetable ones in there too. I only got flower related ones. Part of the reason why those appeal to me is so she also has done she does finishing tutorials, but the products that she's using for the tiered tray tidbits are from Michaels. So anytime anybody finishes anything and they go, here's all the things that I got from Hobby Lobby, I, as a non-American, sit here and go like, ugh, like, so I'll never be able to get that stuff. Now, it might be that Hobby Lobby will ship to Canada, but again, generally the shipping costs are like, would more than double the price of everything that I could possibly purchase from Hobby Lobby, even if they ship to Canada, which I might have checked it out at one point in time and went, eh. So until I can make a physical trip into the US to shop at a Hobby Lobby, which that's not anytime soon right now, but whatever. Anytime anybody finishes stuff with from Hobby Lobby, I get to go, great. So products I can't get here. When people say that they've gotten stuff from Michaels, it turns into a 50-50 thing. So even though we do have Michaels here in Canada, there is no guarantee that the products that you lovely people down in the US can see at your Michaels is what we get here. There is no, it's not a direct correlation. I did go to my Michaels, and it turns out even my Michaels had the blocks. So again, and I laughed when I was buying these blocks. The gentleman who was checking me out was like, because I bought more than the 4 that I'm going to show you, he was like, what are you doing with these? Because I will say, you know, I don't know that holy guacamole is ever going to be something I need to put in my kitchen. Not that I, you know, bless this house. It's certainly a lovely sentiment, but this is not necessarily my decorating style. The answer is I did not get this for either of these sentences. It's because it's the sides. So these are what they're using. They've got, I think, a lot of their small Christmas ornaments are size that they would fit on these blocks as well. So they had them in the Canadian Michaels. They were on sale. So it was fine. So I bought them. And so I got red ones and green ones, which will, I don't know that this is necessarily the flowers, but this could certainly go for the flower ones as well. We had them in light blue and navy blue. So I think when I was watching Priscilla and Chelsea this week, they were talking about black. I don't think my store had black, but that's okay. I will take navy blue over black every day of the week. So I bought these, and I bought multiples of each of these colors. yes, I was excited. A finishing product that we actually could get here in Canada. All right. All right. What else did I get? Well, I've had a little bit of a fabric problem. So I bought... So again, I've been looking at my stitching plan for the rest of this year because my big thing is I was trying to make sure that all of the fabric that I needed was sorted out, and the answer is it wasn't. In my head, I knew exactly what I needed. June's fabric, I still hasn't, it's not been cut yet, so I need to hurry up and get that thing cut and ready, cut and serged. July's fabric is ready to go. August fabric was not. In my head, I knew exactly what it was going to be. It was going to be antique white. It wasn't going to be a problem. And then I was looking at the fiber that's being used for August, and then I held it up against the antique white and went, I went, this is too harsh. The contrast is too harsh, even with an antique white. The called for fabric, I think, is parchment. So I ran off to my L&S, and I started off with, so again, things that, so parchment generally to me looks too yellow. I see yellow and brown in a wide variety of colors. So, like, ivory is too yellow for me. But, so it puts me in a bit of a pickle, right? White is too white. Antique white is too harsh of a contrast. Ivory is too yellow. Anyway, so what I ended up getting, so this is 32 count Lugana in soft ivory. I don't know how to, so you can see against my sweater, it's not as white as the white. So this is my fallback position as to what I'm going to use for my August project. But while I was playing with things, so that's one of them, I went, oh, it might work on lilac. So this is one where I'm actually going to have to do a test swatch. So I am going to have to take the thread, I'm going to have to stitch, you know, about 10 stitches in this fabric and see if it works. I think it might be lovely on this. It might not work though. It's a fiber, which if you looked at it, you would not necessarily go, oh, that'll work on lilac. And it's true. In an evening, I can look at it, I can haul the thread out, and I can put it on this, and I go, like, this is not a good call, which puts it on the soft ivory. But there are sometimes during daylight, I look at it and I go, ooh, it might look lovely. So I think I'm officially in the camp of I need to do a test swatch, and then I can make my final decision, and then I can cut my fabric, and then I can get it all serged up. Stay tuned for August for the big reveal of the fabric choice. All right. But while I was doing that, I bought other things. So I've been looking at this chart for like eons, and since I've fallen off the Stitch from Stash bandwagon, it justifies a lot of shopping. Anyway, wait for the return of Stitch from Stash, which hopefully was going to kick in again in July. So this is One Starry Christmas Eve from With Thy Needle and Thread, Brenda Gervais. It might be Country Stitches. She's got two, yes, this is technically from Country Stitches. She's got two companies. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know why some of them are Country Stitches ones and some of them are With Thy Needle and Thread. Brenda Gervais, One Starry Christmas Eve. This has been taunting me for quite a while, and I finally decided I was going to get it. Now, I also, so the called for fabric is, I think it's 36 count Aztec red linen by Weeks Dye Works. I'm not generally a Weeks Dye Works fan, and so I tried in my head to come up with another red fabric because I've got a couple of other red fabrics, Luganas, in my stash. And the answer is they just don't work quite as well. And so I have now ended up with a piece of Aztec red linen. Now this is actually not 36 count because I don't think, again, welcome to hard times in the land from fabrics and dyers and things like that. So they didn't have a 36 count Aztec red. Weeks I think also comes in 35. The answer was they didn't have any of that. If I wanted Aztec red, I could get it in 30 count or I could get it in, well, 30 count. And I think this is the last piece of 30 count that they had in Aztec red. It's not that they don't have more on order. When they're going to get it is anybody's guess. And again, it's not like I'm stitching on it this year. I could have ordered it and waited however long it took. It could take 6 months and I still would have been fine because it's not in my 2021 stitching plan. The answer was they had it in 30 count. I like 30 better than 36. It came home. This chart also calls for, the called for threads are Classic Colors Belle Soie Silk. So I don't necessarily know that I'm going to use their silk for all of it. The silk that was important to me was the variegated thread for the coat. And that is, so the color for that is Poison Apple. Here it is, so that came home too. And that's what, so if I chose to get something other than Aztec red, then I was going to have to get a different overdyed red to do it. So this looks very close, and normally I would worry saying this is too close, you're never going to see it on this fabric. It's the overdyed effect because the Santa is surrounded by, technically the called for around him is black. I'm not going to do it in black. That's going to turn into a navy blue because I said so. So out of all of the colors, the only one I got was the Poison Apple because that's the color for the coat. Now, doesn't mean I wasn't me. I also picked up this Romy's Creation Red Devil because that's also an overdyed red. So yeah, could I be ridiculous? Could I end up, see, it doesn't look bad. I might try it on one of my Luganas, but either way I'm going, I've got the red that I need to do One Starry Christmas Eve. All right, I'm having a hands-on design issue. So, I also got her block party. This is the 25th. Because it's got all the reindeer around the bottom, blah, 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 top, etc. I have not bought the pins because I don't know that I will ever put the pins in it. When you buy the chart, it does come with this Weeks Dye Works gingham wool that goes on top. The called for fabric is 28 count amber linen. So 28 count, if you use something of a higher count, which would make it a smaller piece, you might need to trim your piece of wool felt to fit on it. But trimming it is easier than trying to make it bigger. And again, so this is amber linen is what she did it on, but this is me. So you know that's too brown for me. That didn't work for me. While I was doing that, I did get the Weeks Dye Works, not all of them, just the ones I didn't have. So, you know, the browns, there was no way I had 3 skeins of this in my house. I'm not good with Weeks Dye Works, generally don't have it. So the yellow is for the branches. Whether that stays that way is anybody's guess, but while I was there, I got them. So those are the Weeks Dye Works. I think Yeah, blue spruce. There is some green in there, but that's one that I had in my stash, so I didn't get that one. Blue spruce and onyx. So I must have those in my stash because I checked in my X-Stitch app, and so I didn't need to get those, so I only got the other ones. And what I have chosen to get is, so this is Dusty Green Jobelan. So normally, even for me, this is too yellow for me. But while I was trying to find something that worked, but I figure that will look just fine. And my herringbone wool will look just lovely on that too. So it's a 28 count, so everything should work and fit and be fine. So that's what I have. That's what I have kitted up for that one. And you should only need a wide 1/8, so 18 by 13.5 is all you need to do one of these blocks. So that's what I got. Yeah. So Dusty Green Jobelan for me for the block party the 25th. Yeah, the piles. But, you know, I said I'm having a hands-on design problem. So while I was there, I also got the 31st. Again, I did not get the pins. Doesn't mean I can't go back and get them. I don't know when these are going to show up in the stitching plan. I just don't necessarily know that on any given day that I will necessarily put pins in these things. So this is the 31st. So normally for a lot of her, like she does a lot of chalkboard ones. I generally do her chalkboard ones on 32 count charcoal Lugana. And I seriously contemplated doing this one on the charcoal Lugana because I have that in my stash. And then I went, I really enjoy how big the contrast is. You would still see the contrast on charcoal, but it was appealing to me on the black. So she did this on a black linen, 28 count. And fortunately, my LNS actually had black Jobelan. So I always prefer an even weave, whether it's Lugana or linen to, whether it's Lugana or Jobelan to a linen, because I like an even weave better. And they happen to have black Jobelan. I don't know that you can get Lugana in black. I'm thinking yes, but I don't know. There's been a lot of chatter. Like I think the Monaco version of it, you can't get the black in. I'll check that. If there's a link to black Lugana in the notes below, it means you can still get black Lugana. Again, I brought the Jobelan home because there was a package of Jobelan there. It was a wide 1/8, which was all I needed. It's an even weave, and I went and sold. And again, because these aren't necessarily colors that I stitch a lot with. So you need 2 pumpkins from Weeks Dye Works. This is squash. I probably could have gotten away with the curry for this design, but I chose to, so yeah, it's really those stars. I chose to go with the brighter version, which is squash. The called for green here at the top of the pumpkins is pepperoncini, and I don't like that. That's too bright for me. I don't like that one. And so I have replaced that with bullfrog. And again, I think it will show up. I go, this is more pumpkin colored. I don't think it's going to detract from what this looks like in the end. So I have changed the pepperoncini to bullfrog, also by Weeks Dye Works. And so I'm missing, I think it also calls for dahlia. I'm looking at the wrong side, which I didn't get. So either they were out or I've got it upstairs, and whitewash, which I also have. So those were the colors I needed for this. Again, this is a change because anytime I see pepperoncini, I go, Lots of people really like it, and I think that's great. It's too much for me. And I said I'm having a hands-on design problem. Let's talk chalk. So this is the third one. She's already done autumn and she's already done winter, and I have not bought those. I was really excited about it, and then for both of those I went, this one surprisingly actually really worked for me. So you get 3 charts. You get this bigger one, you get this little one here, and you get this little one that you can make into a pillow. Technically, you can make any of them into a pillow if you want. How you finish it is up to you. And there's a part of me that goes, I'm surprised that this appeals to me. But it appealed to me, and I was having a bit of a shopping binge. So it came home. I thought I did well. I only brought spring home. I did not bring winter or autumn. Summer should be coming out here at some point. She's also, she's releasing a new series of 3. They're kitchen ones. I think the first one is, so there's 3 in this series, and included in the 3 is there's parts to a mystery one. So you need to buy all 3 charts to be able to stitch the mystery. The first one is Life Short, Lick the Bowl. I really like that one. I think that's great. I'm pretty sure that one's coming home. She did a whole series on laundry. I got all of those. Anyway, so Lick the Bowl. I don't think it's maybe coming to shops soon. She's shown it. I think the shops can order it. I don't know what the other 2 are. I might change some of the colors in Lick the Bowl. But I like the sentiment because as a kid, we certainly were a family of the treat during baking time was whoever it was that was allowed to lick the bowl. That was a big treat. And when I bake now, it's great because I get to lick the bowl every time. Anyway, la 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 la. Hands-on design. I'm having a problem. Okay, and then last. I hadn't seen this before, so this was in the shop. So I don't know when this came out, but it came out. So the copyright is 2020, so I hadn't seen it before. This is Butterflies in the Grass. So apparently I'm doing a block Biscornu thing going on in my head. Anyways, stay tuned for whenever these come up for the stitching and see whatever I do with them. The interesting thing about it, this is all of the called for are DMC. So I didn't, there's one color of Magnifica beads in here, which I don't think I got those because my answer is we will worry about that when we get closer to stitching. But yeah, DMC, I thought that was, yeah. Anyway, it appealed to me. I hadn't seen it. It came home because, you know, I'd broken my stitch from stash problem. Okay, it's going to resume in July. We're going to rein it in. We're back on track. Okay. And those are some of my Stashquisitions. I know, it's already, we haven't even gotten to the topic yet. All right, here comes the topic. Let's talk a little bit about beading. So Denise had some questions on this, and she had some very specific ones, which I will address. I may talk round out a couple of things on those, but certainly her questions are where we're going to start with. So have you added beads when the beads were not part of the pattern? And the answer to that is yes. And in fact, here she comes again. So I haven't started the beading on this, and I loved when Charlotte was sort of saying, beads in the Never-Ending Nativity? Because she stitched it. She's like, I don't remember putting beads in. Mine doesn't have beads. Wait a minute, did they change the chart? And the answer is no, they didn't change the chart. But there are all of these sporadic, let me chart. Where did I put it? So there are all of these random stitches here. So the called for is to stitch that with Krynic blending filament, 2 strands. But when you're doing that, so the model for this was stitched on 18 count Aida. The one that I inherited is 36 count linen. And when you're dragging your Krynic behind the linen to do these, it shows through. It's very apparent. When you're dragging your Krynic behind 18 count Aida, it's not going to show through nearly as much, if at all, just because the Aida is that much of a thicker fabric. But when you're doing it on when you're doing it on 36 count linen, dragging your threads along here to do this, you're going to be able to see that. One of the options that I have learned over the course of this last year is actually some people, when they run into that, so do all of your stitching and then they iron on interfacing to it and then stitch these like weird things, because the interfacing then provides enough fabric in between that you don't necessarily see it. The answer is on 2 of the other panels, this had already been encountered and the decision had been made to replace those with beads, because then you can use DMC that matches your fabric, or you can use invisible thread, whether it's Nymo or YLA Wonder Thread, YLI Wonder Thread. You can use those. So the decision had already been made for me. I think it's absolutely the correct color, the correct decision. So on mine, all of these random stitches are going to be turned into beads. And so that holds true for things like, so if you're stitching a winter scene that has random 1 stitches, to represent snow that's falling, you could easily switch it out that you could switch those to beads if you wanted. You can switch. I've seen people who don't like to do French knots. So when French knots or colonial knots are used for things like eyes or buttons on a jacket, you could easily switch those out for beads. Centers of flowers. Anywhere, if you were doing a nutcracker and you wanted to make the epaulets on the uniform stand out more, you can use it there. So it's entirely up to you where you're sort of like, that would be shinier or it would look different. Like I always like the buttons because it's like, then they look the beads make it actually look more like buttons. So if it's like a 1 stitch, even if it's 4 stitches, something like that, can you replace them with beads? Absolutely. Centers of flowers, eyes on animals, that tends to be where I go. I have seen people who have changed cross-stitch patterns where they've done the whole thing in beads. So again, this was on a Facebook posting where someone took, it was an elegant shoe, and she chose to stitch the whole thing in beads. And that is one of the things, right, with a cross-stitch, because you've got a pattern, you can replace every single one of those X's with a bead if you want. So again, she did the whole shoe. It was a cross-stitch pattern. She did the whole thing in beads. It looked amazing. It was great. I don't know that I would, it kind of appeals to me, but it kind of doesn't. So anyway, things to think about. If you are going like, I wonder if I could change this into a bead, the answer is yes, you can change it into a bead. If you think it would look better as a bead, make it a bead. It's your project. Do I only add beads when they come in a kit? No. There are a lot of charts out there that have beads on them for a variety of purposes. So again, so the Never Ending Nativity is an example of one where it doesn't call for beads and I put them in. Winter Faerie Dream, this is not a kit, but the pattern does call for beads to be added to this. And there are a lot of patterns that do that. Again, even this, I've lost it. Where did it go? Here's my Biscornu. Right, this Biscornu calls for beads, and now that I can see it, so they're down here as an edging. Helen D has recently put a pillow together where she did a bead edging to it. She's done a tutorial. I will put a link to that in the notes below. So there's all different ways that you can use beads. If you're going, I wonder if I could use a bead there, try putting a bead there. If you don't like it, you can always take it out, right? Do you need different sized beads depending on the count of fabric? Yes. So generally on the Mirabilias and the Nora Corbetts, so I put those in the categories where like they tend to be fairly bead treasure or Mill Hill Treasure heavy. Generally her models are stitched on 32 count. If you're doing an over dyed, it may get tight. So Faerie Winter Dream is being done on an over-dyed fabric. It's a 28 count. When I first pulled this out, so if you go to May of last year when I first started her, one of the things that I was testing out, because I do have the Mill Hill beads for her, was how well these fit in these slots. So again, with the over-dyed fabric, this tends to shrink as part of the dye process. So this is probably not a true 28. It's something a little bit smaller than that. I don't think it's as fine as a 32, but the beads, even the bugle beads, were fitting fantastically, which is what I was checking. On Faerie Winter, on April's Blue Diamond, so this is a 32 count over dyed. This might get a little tight, particularly in the areas where like there's like 4 or 5 in a row. So it doesn't happen very often, but it's sometimes at the base of these leaves. So that's where it could get a little bit interesting, like down here, as to whether or not they're going to fit. So there's a couple of options there. So the Mill Hill bead, I don't know that I have that number off the top of my head. The Mill Hill bead that's called for, I think, is 2026, which is a size 11/0 bead. In Mill Hill, there is some crossover between their regular size beads, which are 11/0, and a petite bead. So Mill Hill also has petite beads, which are sized 15/0. So similar to fabric counts, the higher the number goes, the smaller the bead actually gets. I don't know why that is. I don't know what those numbers mean. I don't do a huge amount of things in the bead land. I just know a few technical terms. So a lot of so the Mill Hill regular seed beads, their antique beads, and their frosted beads are all sized 11/0, whereas their petite beads are 15/0. I want to say the Magnificas are also 15/0, but I forgot to check that. You can also go bigger. So there are also size 8 beads and size 6 beads, and those are just getting bigger and bigger. So you'll find when people, if they're working on 36 count, or if they're sizing down to 40 count, that's where whether your beads are going to fit or not really becomes hit and miss. On 32, generally, you can get beads that fit. 36, probably not too bad. 40 and higher, that's where it turns into a problem. Again, if you're sizing down, if you're trying to size down from a 28 or a 14 count down to a 10 or an 8, for whatever reason you're choosing to do that, you would need to make your beads bigger, and whether the availability of that's where you may need to go to a store where it is not a cross-stitch store. You may need to go to a store that specializes in beads, and they would probably be able to help you come up with some substitutes. So for my April's Blue Diamond, so where I live, there are some specialty bead stores. There is also one of the LNSs here does a lot of, sells other kinds of beads. So it's another option for me where I could say, okay, here's the called for Mill Hill. Do you have a Delica that is similar in color if I'm having a problem? But I'm a long ways off from beading that lovely thing, so I have lots of time to figure out what I'm going to do. And again, they look like, I did a little bit of a test and I was like, it's not too bad. They might be a little bit tight. The other thing about Mill Hill beads is they are not uniform. So a lot of, like, so Delicas for sure. I think Tohos are pretty good. Delicas for sure, where you go, they are uniform in size. So for example, on my chatelaine, there's a lot of Delica beads that are called for those. I've done a chatelaine. It is, like, those are the ones where I go, those are uniform. Mill Hills are not necessarily. So again, when I did my chatelaine, I was doing it on a 32 count Lugana. And again, because it's uniform, uniform fabric threads, uniform beads, it worked out lovely. I was very happy with how it worked out. So again, yeah, so if you're making, if your chart calls, so again, Mirabilia and Nora Corbett are generally, the models are stitched on 32 count, so your beads, the called for beads should fit. Generally, however, her models are stitched on solid colored fabric. So if you're using a hand dyed, and you can see this again in the Facebook groups, if certainly on Mirabilia's it gets talked about a lot because she's pretty bead heavy in a lot of her charts, that if you're using a hand dyed, you may want to go down to a 28 count, where even if you're going like normally I want to do a 32, moving down to a 28 count is not necessarily a bad idea because the dyeing process shrinks the fabrics. So it makes it a tighter. So it won't necessarily be 28, it may be 30-ish, but then you'll have an easier time potentially getting the beads to fit. 32 and a hand dyed, that's where people go, it's not, I'm having a problem getting my beads in. Sometimes the solution is, like, if they're in a row, just skip one. If it's Mill Hill and they're not uniform and you get 2 fat ones in a row, great. Put 2 in next to each other, which is the equivalent of 3 regular ones, if they're all in a line. So sometimes in beading, you just have to figure out what works best, which is, we're going to skip to the technique for beads. So a lot of people, this is personal preference. Make it so it's how you want the bead to look. I personally end up using a full cross on my beads because I like them to sit squarely on the fabric. Now, normally, that's because I'm beading something like this, where the bead is filling in a square. So having the bead lying on an angle, as far as I'm concerned, is not beneficial because I want my bead to fully fill in the square stitching. So that's how I get them to sit upright and be square on the fabric. Again, like on April's Blue Diamond, where they're all in a row, if I found that they were fitting better on a little bit of an angle, that's where I would only use a half stitch. And the half stitch you use, whether it's from top left to bottom right or bottom left to top right, will determine whether it's leaning this way or leaning this way. So you just need to decide if you are wanting your bead to lie on an angle, if that works best for the piece that you're doing the beading on. You just have to do the half stitch so it actually is lying on that angle. But like I say, generally for me and the beading I'm doing, and I think it's because, you know, I have a thing about symmetry and geometrics and all those things, that having it lie squarely in a spot just appeals to me aesthetically. I use a full cross stitch. that, and I sort of go, it makes sure, I feel like I'm going like it's not, for sure not going to fall off. Not that I've generally have my beads falling off my projects either way, but that's just me. Also for technique, there are a variety of things as to how you can attach it. So you can see, like in some of the Mill Hill kits, I was watching somebody, maybe it was Stitch and Mommy, she was working on one where they had very explicit instructions as to what thread color you should be using to attach your bead. I think it was part of a Mill Hill kit. And again, she was like, it actually made sense for the kit what she was working on to, and she's like, they had these very detailed instructions about what thread color to use. Again, the options are you use a color of floss to attach your bead that is similar to your background fabric. So, you know, Never Ending Nativity, you know, can I get DMC that goes with this? No problem. Yes, absolutely. And that's what was used on the previous two panels, which is what I'm going to use when I attach my beads on mine. Again, is it going to make a difference? Nobody's going to see behind the things anyway. Yes. Could I use something else? Yes. I'm going to do it because I have a thing about consistency. Rightly or wrongly, it's got to be consistent for me, so I'm going to use DMC floss to attach my beads. So you can either make it so that it's the same color as your fabric, or you can make it so it's the same color as your bead. To me, the difference is which one makes it blend better, which makes it so that your fiber is less visible and doesn't detract from the bead. That's how I decide. Which means generally my answer is I don't use floss. I tend to use invisible thread. So whether it's YLI Wonder Thread or whether it's Nymo thread, I tend to use invisible thread. I had done beading before, generally where I was using it where it matched the fabric color, which was fine. When I did my chatelaine, which is where I was applying almost 4,000 beads, that's where I became really good at using the YLI Wonder Thread or invisible thread. Lots of people don't like it because they find it very slippery, and the answer is yeah, it's really slippery. My trick to that is I actually do a little bit of a knot so it's attached to the eye of my needle, so it doesn't make the smallest of knots. So I knot it onto my needle because that's how it doesn't slip out. You know, do a bunch, hurriedly get that other end sewn in on the other end, and then keep going, and then you're good to go. You know, and then you just snip at the knot, and it comes right off. So that's my preference. Again, if I had tried to do it to match it to the beads on the chatelaine, it would have been turned into a huge problem. I do the invisible thread. That's what appeals to me from an aesthetic point. You may have some treasures, like there are some treasures on April's Blue Diamond where it's the fiber that you use to attach it is going to have to go over the treasure. So that's, again, for me, that's where the invisible thread comes in. If you're standing and you're looking at it really closely, will you be able to see it? Absolutely. If you're standing 18 inches away, it's not going to be visible. There are also certain treasures where you have to put a bead on top of it to hold it into place. Normally, if that's required, there usually are instructions in your chart that say, bring your thread up, put the bead on, bring the thread down. So it's usually when you've got like round ones, florally ones where they've got a center hole. That's how you attach those. You just put another bead on top of it to keep it needle up through the center hole, put the bead on, back down through the center hole, and you've really locked your treasure into place. All right. So I've talked So I've got a lot of the Mill Hills. So again, I'm just going to do a quick little, so you've got their glass seed beads, which these are size 11s. The Mill Hill also has antique glass beads, also size 11s. In my head, this is just a little more muted. I don't know whether that's true or not in my head. Usually I'm just getting what's called for. These are the petites. I don't think I brought a frosted, you know, and these are the smaller ones. So these are the size 15s. I didn't look it up, but I did bring one. I wonder if it says on here. So here's the Magnificas. I want to say that the Magnificas are shinier, but I don't know that they're a size 15. I feel like they're a little bigger. The Magnificas might also be 11s. Now, here's examples. So these are, again, but these, when you go to Toho or Delica or, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Preciosa, Preciosa. There are also Czech Beads. I'm going to put a link to the Delica bead page, because if you want to see beads, and more beads, you can buy beads by size. You can beads by color. You can buy beads by make. So this is, you know, are they all that different? So here's an example of Toho, but again, they're size 11, which means they're the same size as Mill Hill seed beads, antique beads, and frosted beads. This is, these are those Preciosa, but again, they're a size 11, so same size, different brand, clearly different color, but they are the same size. They would be interchangeable. These are my Delicas, some Delicas, but again, they're size 11. You know, you can get Delicas in size 15s, and that's why on April's Blue Diamond, I may end up choosing to use a Delica bead, depending on if I can get a color that I like. I think I'll start with the Mill Hills and see how they work out. If I'm fighting with the Mill Hills, that's when I go to Delicas, and I will try to find a Delica size 15 bead that is the same color as the called for that. But we're a long ways off from having to make that. So where did I get these lovely beads? These particular beads, so I used to get some of the Stitchy Box ones. There were some bi-monthly ones. There was one year where my gift to myself was the boxes. That's not how they're doing them anymore, but you can still get the box, and at that point in time, it's like you could get the box or you could bead the box up, and so for like an extra $7, they would send you beads that coordinated with whatever it was. So I, of course, added the beads, which is where I've got a lot of these Tohos, Delicas, blah, blah, blahs. You know, they're just enough to, you know, if you were trying to bling something else up, this is where these would come in handy. So the topic, I think that also covers brands of beads, or at least the brands of beads that I know of. The question that was not asked is storage. So there's a couple of different things going on here. I originally started out trying to find storage for when I cracked open one of these Mill Hill packets, because I decided that they couldn't live in here. My technique has gotten a lot better over the years. So now for a Mill Hill, because these reseal actually quite well, I open these, I work out of these. Again, I open the thing, I dump some out onto whether it's a tacky bob. I was like, couldn't remember the name. A tacky bob or a bead mat or whatever it is. But I leave them in here, and if I've got leftovers, I just leave them in here, and I put these back right where, into the drawers where I store my Mill Hills. So I leave these in here. I didn't start off that way. Where I got, so this is a thing that I bought originally. So these are, you know, blah, 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 Mill Hill beads with their numbers on them. So they came with labels that you wrote on. And how these work is each of these compartments comes out. Now, I don't know if you can still get this. This has been a really long time. I don't even remember where I got this. So each of these comes out, but they're a little drawer. Again, this is how I started. This is how I started. Oh, great. Looking saying, I can't get it back on. Okay, I will solve that problem later. Anyway, so you could pull them out, restack them up, blah 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 blah, etc. etc. Label them, and off you went. So that's one of the options. I also have this. So it's a box. Take the lid off, and each of these is a screw top container, so you could just dump it into here and contain your beads. Put a label on the top so you know what you've got. But the thing that I have been using, again, came into this because I was getting those beads as part of my stitchy boxes. So this is the one where I was like, oh, now this is a solution. I will put a link to this in the notes below. I don't know how readily available they are. In the groups that I was a part of, there was talk, I think Doris was being taken over by somebody else and some of their product lines were being discontinued. And this is one of the ones, certainly in Canada. So I've always bought these off of Amazon. I have always bought them off of Amazon.com and had them delivered to somebody down in the US. Thank heavens. I have know some people who are snowbirds, so I can have things delivered to them and they can schlep them home. One of them, there was a lady I used to work with, her parents are snowbirds, but she would go down every Christmas. And so I would, she's the one who really bought these back for me. So I was like, every Christmas I was like, can I have something delivered to your parents? And she very, very graciously every time said yes and schlepped these home for me. So I'm very grateful to Andrea for being one of my pack mules. It was very helpful. So this is a container of 80. And so you can get them in different combinations, but it's the mini ones are the ones that I use because you can see here beads. And so these are all beads in baggies that I've gotten from my stitchy boxes. And I have multiples of these. So one of the things that I like is it does have this cover over top. So congratulations, nothing's falling out until you take the lid off. If you take the lid off and then you know, knock it off the table, things are going to go flying, but not too badly. So they've got all of these containers, which all pop out, right? And it'd be nice if I took one that actually had something in it. Right, so here's the container. So it pops off this way. Now again, this is where I'm storing a bunch of the beads that I got from my stitchy boxes. So they came in baggies. I'm storing them in the baggies with the label on them. But when I put them in, I store them like this so that I can see the color, because at this point it means I'm switching stuff out, so I'm looking for color. But I could take them out of the baggie, tape the label to the top here, and be fine. The only thing with that is when you're looking at something like this, if you put the label on the top, you're going to have a much harder time. So my answer is you'd also need to, it does come with labels. They look like they're labels that belong on the top. So again, I think I would come up, I would just take some skinny Avery labels and just cut them to size so that I could put labels on the outside. Now again, these ones are beads where I would be trying to substitute something. So I don't these aren't labeled at the moment because that's not what they're being used for. If I were coming in and using these, it would be because I was wanting to swap something out or trying to find something that was a better color because I've changed something else in the design. So for me, this is more about color. If I was gonna say, even if I were to crack one of these baggies open, I probably still wouldn't label the thing. Because again, these are beads that I would be using to substitute. And so that's where color becomes more important. But you know, they will fit all sorts of beads, right? So I've got a baggie in here of these, you know, flat shelly things. You know, again, this would be used to substitute in for something. But I put my little bag in. We're good to go. So I will put a link to this in the notes. It will be a link probably explicitly to the Amazon.com version of Life. It's not that it's not when I was originally looking at these that you couldn't find them on Amazon.ca. The answer is, welcome to I don't live in the US. Is if I were to buy these off of Amazon.ca, usually the cost was like 2.5 times the price of what it was on Amazon.com, which, as someone who works in finance, I know that's not the exchange rate. And then you had to add shipping on top of that, so it was not good. Hence, I ordered from Amazon.com, had a lovely lady who very graciously, it was 3 Christmases, schlepped back these. So I've got 3 of these. So I have boxes for 240 of them. See, some are empty. Anyway, so those are options for storage. Again, for Mill Hills, I have gotten proficient enough that I actually leave them in their containers. There are lots of people who don't like those and it doesn't work for them. Just the act of opening those little containers means an explosion of beads. Again, do what works for you. If you have trouble getting into those, great. Open them on a surface with something where you can collect all your beads and then put them into some container of another kind that you find easier. Again, I've seen people on the Facebook groups where they don't like this because they don't like, they find opening those containers is too hard. So that may mean for you that you really do want one of these ones where you can, twist off the top. A lot of people who do diamond painting use these types of things. And again, if you're looking for other bead options, a diamond painting group may be a way to find other options for how you could store them. Those are the three not Mill Hill versions of how I store beads. And with that, oh my goodness, we're like practically at movie length again. I'm sorry about this. Thank you to the lady who said I watched the first 35 minutes and then I went to bed and then watched the rest of it the next day. Absolutely. Don't forget, if it's movie length, you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. I will be here. You could watch it every day of the week, which sounds like a little much. I don't know if anybody wants me that frequently, but you do not have to watch the movie length ones all in one go. Feel free to watch at your leisure. And with that, I hope everybody has a great week. If you're in Canada, I hope you're enjoying your May long weekend. I didn't even look to see what the forecast was like across the entire country. I just went, not a great May long weekend where I am, which is great because I'm planning on stitching. So I hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, find some time to do some stitching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.